Thank you, everybody. A very good evening to all of you. We're all set for a very engaging and contemporary session now, which cuts through all organizations and sectors. It's a privilege as part of IIA Hyderabad chapter to have subject luminaries on POSH and compliance incident management. With that said, before I get into the introductions, I request you to note a couple of things, please. All questions will be taken up at the end of the session. The participants are going to be on listen-only mode, and the session is being recorded. The point of view which is expressed here is purely the point of view of the speakers. And with that said, I'll start the introductions. I am Sunil Rao. I'm IA Hyderabad Vice President for the IA chapter in Hyderabad. And I have with me two very, very distinguished speakers. Raj Kumar, who has got 30 plus years of experience in the field of fraud, crime investigations, and functions related to ethics and integrity. His professional career started with Mumbai Police, where after 18 years of distinguished service, moved on to the corporate world, including the Big Four, Citibank, and has been with Protiviti for over 2 years. On today's topic, Raj Kumar is recognized as one of the foremost speakers and advisors on POSH. I would like to walk you through some of his credentials and accomplishment. How much ever said, it's less, but even then, I will make an attempt to summarize it in a very crisp manner. He's an external member of Anti-Sexual Harassment Committee of Reserve Bank of IT and MSCI. He's been instrumental in training 3,000 plus members of the internal committee, senior management, HR, legal compliance teams across India, and including clients from the Fortune 500 companies. Raj has also trained 200 plus officials of the Mumbai Railway Police on POSH, 25 plus participants at the Indo-French Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He's been instrumental in conducting multiple master classes on POSH for participants from various corporates across multiple cities in India. As a panelist at several prestigious forums, Raj has also been part of very, very important panels, which have been organized by Indo-American Chamber of Commerce. He's also been he's also been a panelist on HRDN, which is a Human Resource Development Network. In terms of the clients, Raj has helped them in framing the policies and building a response plan to POSH, as well as conducting a gap analysis of their existing policies. He's advised the IC members on how to conduct the IC proceedings flawlessly and write the report in a legally correct manner. Advising clients on how to conduct sexual harassment investigations at the workplace. He's also assisted the world's largest FMCG companies with the sexual harassment investigations outside India. With that said, thank you so much, Raj, for taking out time. I now will introduce the second speaker, Suprabhat, who's a managing director with Protiviti and leads ethics compliance and fraud risk advisory practice in India. With over 25 years of diverse professional experience, Suprabhat has worked on vast array of clients in India, Middle East, Southeast Asia, and in domain of ethics and integrity. On today's topic, Suprabhat has conducted multiple POSH trainings and helped many companies in revamping their policies and procedures on POSH. He's also supported multiple investigations into employee harassment complaints at different companies. Further, he's been extensively involved in advisory discussions with various stakeholders like senior executive management, board of directors, audit committees, and has helped them in mitigating risks arising out of the POSH incidents. With that said, I'm glad to hand over to Suprabhat, who will give you an overview of this session and also in general, an overview about the POSH. Thank you so much again, Raj, Suprabhat. A pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Sunil. Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. Thanks very much to IIA for facilitating this panel. It's really a pleasure to be speaking to such a large number of highly interested and informed participants today. The main session, of course, will be conducted by Raj Kumar, who, as you, Sunil, mentioned, has really phenomenal credentials in this space. I'm just going to spend a couple minutes introducing the topic and introducing what we are trying to do today. So for most people who are attending this, most people would be aware of POSH. It's been discussed quite substantially for the last many years. It became a law in 2013 after probably a long 12, 15, 16-year battle to get onto the law books. Initially, there was something called the Vishaka Guidelines, and then, of course, we had the formal POSH Act that came into the picture in 2013. What's interesting is that there are some really countries way ahead of us when it comes to a similar act. Someone like USA had an act around sexual harassment at the workplace. since 1964, Australia since 1984, the European Union between 2002 and 2008. But I think a bulk of countries really in the last 4 or 5 years have actually put a law like this in place. Besides India, Israel, Japan, Singapore, South Korea, some of the well-known countries actually enacted a law similar to POSH around the same time as we did. So I think it's an important, really important law at the workplace, law overall that helps strengthen or empowers the women working at the workplace. I think key points that experts talk about why that law is really good is, I think it's clearly defined sexual harassment. In the past, there was a rather vague definition. So it's clearly defining sexual harassment. It is defining the circumstances that can constitute sexual harassment. It defines what an aggrieved woman is. It defines the duties of the employers. It defines mechanism for complaint redressal through the internal committee kind of mechanism. And Rajkumar is going to talk in detail about many of these things. So I think since 2013, there has been a growing interest in this law, in this act. And I think there was a bit of a peaking in 2017, 18, 19, when globally the Me Too movement started, gathered a lot of pace, and of course, eventually plateaued out. But I think now all the noise is gone, and most companies are again focusing on how really to empower people at the workplace using the POSH Act. So today's session, we are really not trying to get anyone to become an expert on the law or somebody to start functioning necessarily like a member of the internal committee. Our session is designed slightly differently. The way we look at it, a large number of participants would be employees within organizations, quite a few of them with responsibilities of governance, directly or indirectly. And what we are trying to really do is help make it possible for people like this to understand the nuances of the law. More importantly, if senior management, audit committee, board, anybody approaches them for some advice and guidance on what to do if there is an incident like this at the workplace, the idea of today's session is really to get people to become advisors internally. So that's what we are going to try and focus. And of course, Rajkumar and I will always be available for more detailed discussions on phone or email separately at any point in time. But today's session, like I mentioned, will try and focus at certain very specific aspects. So having said that, over to Rajkumar for the session on prevention of sexual harassment of women at workplace, or well known as POSH. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Sunil and Suprabhat, for the generous introduction of mine to the participants. So I think let's move on to the genesis of that. I will not go into detail because Suprabhat has already mentioned, he spoke something about the Vishaka guidelines. So of course, the law, in fact, was formed in the year 1997 when Supreme Court in the Vishaka guidelines had talked about this particular law. And it will be interesting to know that every High Court or the Supreme Court judgment itself is a law. When there is no statutory law which was passed by the legislature, it is not in place, then the judgments passed by the High Courts and Supreme Courts are law till the time there is an enactment of the law by the legislators. But unfortunately, in India, we have a mentality that we think that unless there is a specific act, so we usually don't recognize judgments as the law. But when we actually try to deal in the legal things, that time the judgments always come for the rescue because they itself in our law. So I think let us try to go, because I joined police in 1989. So in fact, that time this law was not there, nor Vishaka guidelines were there. But there were some laws, Indian Penal Code and those kind of laws are there. And still we have to register. We used to register those cases of the sexual harassment. So it could be at the workplace or outside the workplace, but we used to register those cases. But the challenge was basically the definition which is now at present today defined in the Act or the Vishaka guidelines, it is quite an elaborate definition, and it talks about various aspects. For example, earlier, before this 1997 judgment, people or the people who are committing the acts or the sexual harassment misconduct, they always used to take the benefit of the loopholes in the law, and they say this cannot, there is no such sexual harassment in following categories has been defined in the Act. But if you see KPS Gill case and all, so there was some force used. For example, there was allegation against the senior IPS officer. In that particular case, in fact, there was a section of outraging modesty of women. So there are two sections. In fact, they are still outraging modesty of women and insulting modesty of women. So there is some force used with a criminal intent. So that kind of wordings were there in the law. That's the reason all these aspects which have been defined in the Sexual Harassment Act now or in the 1997 judgments were not covered. So that time practically there was no registration of the cases of sexual harassment. So I think now this is the law. So I think it is very the definition is very elaborate. It has defined so many things in the Act now. So that's one. I think one important thing is that any violation of any sexual harassment to the women is basically the violation of the fundamental rights of the women. Under Articles 14, 15, 19, and 21. I think I'll just touch upon this. What are these articles? Why it is important here? If you see Article 14, it talks about right to equality and equal protection of laws. What does it mean? It means that to be equal in dignity. It applies to women also, that women should be treated with dignity because they are also equal in the workplace, and they should be treated, and everyone should be treated with respect and consideration, to participate on an equal basis with others in any areas of economic, social, political, cultural, or civil life. And further it says that all human beings are equal before the law and have the rights to equal protection and the benefit of law. So now there is another terminology used in the same article which says us what is equal treatment. We have just mentioned about right to equality, then what is equal treatment? So many a times I ask this question when I conduct the in-person trainings to my participants, they always say it is one and same. So there is slight difference between the right to equality and the equal treatment. So what is equal treatment? Equal treatment as an aspect of quality is not equivalent to the identical treatment. It doesn't mean that it is identical treatment. To realize full and effective equality, it is necessary to treat people differently according to their different circumstances. So let me share an example here. For example, if there are people who are physically challenged people, if they are working, and suppose if you are expecting similar kind of energy or the output what other normal employees are doing, so it is not possible, correct? So that the law says that equal treatment should be there, but it is not the equal means identical treatment. So there has to be special treatment for them, but still it is equal treatment. So we cannot expect the similar kind of expectation or probably the work from special category people. So that's the reason it is mentioned as right to equality and equal treatment. Both are different here. Then let's talk about Article 15. So many times I conduct the sessions across India. I ask always this question. The people say, "Sir, what is this? This is a women-centric law. It is completely biased law. It is only for the women. So women can file the false complaint against anyone, and there is no control on it. What about us? Even men are harassed." Valid. The question is very right. But I think important thing is that people come out with some fancy surveys and they say, so 95% of the cases are false. 90% of the cases are false. Where is the, I mean, there is no such survey done where it can say the 95. There are surveys, many surveys, but I have not read any survey where it says that 90% or 80% of the cases of the sexual harassment are false or malicious. And they also said that this women-centric law is only specially made for the women. So if you read Article 15, this is very important. The Article 15 says that the state shall prohibit discrimination on the grounds of sex, race, caste, religion, and place of birth. And in the same article, it is also been mentioned that the state can always enact the special laws for the women and children. So why the scope is created in this article? Because they know that it takes some or other form for the harassment. So the law is basically this article is evolving as and when the style or probably the modus operandi of sexual harassment changes. So I think they are always, I mean, that the scope is kept open in this article, so the laws can be amended accordingly. And that is how we see this judgment also, as well as this Act and Rules 2013. Now let us talk about Article 19. It says that right to practice any profession or to carry on any occupation, trade or business, which include providing safe working environment of women, for the women at the workplace. So it's very important. Then if you see Article 21, it says that every person has a right to life. Not only right to life, but to right to life with dignity. That is very important here. And nobody can be held responsible without giving the fair opportunity. That has also been mentioned in the article. What does it mean? This particular article has taken care of the respondent, where the respondents or the people against whom the complaint has been made, if they feel they are victimized or there is some false complaint has been filed against them, so the law says that they should be given the opportunity, reasonable opportunity. They should be heard according to the principle of natural justice, and then come to the conclusion. Without giving the opportunity, the case or the matter should not be decided against him or her. For example, if you see Ajmal Kasab's case 2611, we all know there was so much of evidence, ample of evidence, electronic evidence, circumstantial evidence, oral evidence. Despite that, the court has given the opportunity to the accused to defend himself. And the trial went for almost 2 years, and the court convicted after giving the reasonable opportunity. It means that the article or the law, in fact, the Sexual Harassment Act also takes care, and it says that then the people, in fact, against whom the complaint is made, they should also be given the equal opportunity. So this is very important. So let's move to the next slide here. So what is the objective of this particular act now, 2013 Act and Rules? It basically it is about create a healthy, safe and secure environment that enables employees without fear of prejudice, gender bias and sexual harassment. They should be working. Then it says that ensure employees' right to be treated with dignity, fairness and respect. Very important at the workplace. Then protect every woman from any sexual harassment, irrespective whether the woman is employed or not. What does it mean? It means that not only the women employees at the workplace on the payroll, but it can be any women. It could be intern, it could be temporary employee, it could be contract employee, it could be on the ad hoc basis, or it could be any visitor also. Suppose, for example, if you are visiting a Vodafone gallery or any gallery of any company, so there the visitor visits. So it means that it is also the workplace for them, and the committee there at such locations or in the restaurant, we can say. So those people can take care, or they should have some mechanism to deal with this menace even though the visitor is not their employee. So we will not go into those details because this session is completely different. But when we talk about the IC, or probably when we conduct this kind of training to the IC, we can discuss in detail. But I'm just saying that any women who is visiting at a particular place, that is workplace for her also. Then to develop and implement a policy for prevention of sexual harassment. This is very important. Unless there is a policy, I think nobody can be regulated. In fact, it is basically a kind of code of conduct which talks about the roles and responsibilities of the employees. It talks about roles and responsibilities about the employer. It also talks about the roles and responsibilities of the internal committee. And that needs to be defined. Otherwise, unless nobody will know. As such, there is a lot of expectation from the law, because this law is basically there are a lot of things which are legal, in fact. And as a layman or a common man, it may not be possible for them to understand all these legal nuances. That is the reason the employer or the internal committee, it's a great responsibility on their shoulders. They have to simplify these things and circulate or probably disseminate these kind of things to the larger audience in the organization, so that they understand the importance of this particular law. Then to evolve a permanent mechanism for the prevention and redressal of sexual harassment cases and other acts of gender-based violence at the workplace. So it means that whenever there is a complaint of sexual harassment, there has to be a proper mechanism how it should be dealt. So we'll not go into that detail, but we have one slide where we have a chart about, or probably the life cycle of this case, how that can be handled. We can discuss in that particular slide. Constitute an internal committee and lay guidelines for redressal of complaint of sexual harassment. I just told you, in such policies, it can also be given the various scenarios of sexual harassment. What it could be, many a times there are some borderline cases. Sometimes it could be discrimination, sometimes it could be harassment, sometimes it could be sexual harassment. So people many a time they come and file the complaint. They feel that there is a harassment from a male employee. Let me go to the sexual harassment committee or the anti-sexual harassment committee in the organization. So that is not fair. So the internal committee will assess and decide whether it falls under which category: discrimination, harassment, or sexual harassment. If it is not sexual harassment, the committee can direct or forward that complaint to the concerned authority or the department in the organization who can take care. It doesn't mean that if it is not sexual harassment, that cannot be dealt. So organizations can always help the employees for other kinds of discrimination, sexual harassment, not the sexual harassment. So what are other objectives that are very important here? Regulatory compliances. So this is again a key thing because it is very well monitored across India. Not only suppose if you create one mechanism in a head office, it doesn't mean that, for example, if the company has 10 branches across India, all those branches across India will be monitored by the respective government regulatory committees or the government regulatory bodies. Every district has that kind of mechanism. And just to avoid the regulatory action, then prevent reputational loss. If you see in the public domain, wherever there are such cases of sexual harassment, if it is not properly dealt, and if it comes out in the media or if it goes to the law enforcement, there is a tremendous or huge reputation loss to the company, even though the company must have done a good job. There are a lot of cases. In fact, there are huge the monetary fines and penalties on the company or damages given to the complainant. We'll see those cases in the subsequent slides now. So let us understand what is sexual harassment. What is the definition here? It says that a demand or request of sexual favors. So what does it mean? I mean, there are very rare cases where the person can very shamelessly go and tell a lady in the lady colleague for the sexual favors. But always it is not that the case, correct? People try to indirectly communicate something. For example, there is one case I will not describe or name the company. In that company, in fact, the lady employee goes for a training to a different location, and the trainer, in fact, after the training, proposed that lady, can we go for the dinner? She said, fine. The trainer is asking, nothing wrong. She also thought we can learn. When she goes for the dinner along with that senior, the senior says, he says that how depressed and unhappy he is in his married life. He talks about his married life and says that he is very unhappy in the married life. Secondly, he says that so you are always traveling, you are away from your husband. How you cope your husband? How you can cope up without your husband? Then he asks, so are you when you're with your husband? Do you have? So then he says that okay, how do you manage living for a long time without your husband? So don't you feel that you should be having sex and all? Then he asks her that suppose if it is not possible, then do you masturbate every day? So these kind of what does it in fact indicate? It indicates that he's wanting the sexual favor, or probably he's trying to misuse that dinner time with her and trying to pose this kind of questions so that the answer comes from her. So this lady, in fact, she was very agreed with this particular behavior. She filed the complaint, and finally that matter was decided and action was taken against the concern. So I mean, it may not be always a direct proposition to a lady. It can be indirect form also. Showing pornography. What does it mean? Nobody can go and just show some pornographic picture to a lady. Hardly it happens. But for example, if you are in a company's WhatsApp group, or even if you're not in a company's WhatsApp group, you share something, some sexually explicit messages or the picture, and if the lady is offended, she can file the complaint. So that can also be, or sometimes if you are saying a screensavers, or probably we are doing something, we are doing some personal stuff on the laptop, and a lady employee or the female colleague sitting next to us, and she watch all those things. So she may get offended and she may file the complaint. Then making sexually colored remarks. This is again people directly they may not indicate something, but for example, if the lady is coming, so they can someone says, okay, when she enters into the office, oh, TikTok karke aati hai. What does it mean? It is completely a sexually colored remarks. For example, making some physical contact and advances. So it is not necessary that suppose someone is going close to a lady, it doesn't mean that always there should be a touch by the respondent to a lady. In fact, there is one Supreme Court judgment also which says that, which is clearly defined, that just by making sexual advances, even there is no touch, can amount to sexual harassment. And this last one is very important here. Any other unwelcome physical, verbal or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. It means that if there are any act which has some sexual connotation and the lady filed the complaint, the IC is bound to take the cognizance. So the matter or the sexual harassment law is basically subjective act or the subjective law. So it is subject to experience of the women. She will say, I feel that, okay, I have been sexually harassed, so please treat my complaint, and there could be some sexual connotation. In such situation, I think every aspect or every scenario would be covered practically if you see this. Of course, I mean, there is again, when the inquiry is conducted, then many a time it can come to the conclusion that there is no sexual harassment. So let me share one example here. In the organization, in fact, there was an boy sitting in a canteen, real life example. All examples which I'm sharing here, all real life example. And in this particular case, the boy, in fact, was singing a song in the canteen whole day. And whenever the lady passed from that particular canteen to go to the washroom, she hears the song, Jab se tujhe maine dekha to aise laga. So this lady agreed with this song and she goes and filed a complaint with sexual harassment, anti-sexual harassment committee. Committee calls that guy and asks him, why do you attribute this song to this particular lady? He said that I had never seen this lady, I never attributed this song. But the company said, but you always sing this song. He says, yeah, I always sing this song, whole time practicing this because I've been selected for the Indian Idol competition. So I took the permission from the management, and that's the reason I'm practicing here. So sometimes there could be this kind of mistaken identities also, there could be communication gap, misunderstanding. That's the reason there is a conciliation mechanism given in the law. So those cases may not go to the committee. Before that, it could be decided by giving the opportunity, or the moment the lady comes to know there is some misunderstanding, she may withdraw her complaint. So then there are other acts also. For example, implied or explicit promise of preferential treatment. If someone is the employer or probably the senior employee or the reporting manager of a lady employee, if he try to imply or probably explicitly promise of preferential treatment to a lady for the sexual harassment, for the sexual favors, then it can amount to sexual harassment. Or it could be otherwise also implied or explicit threat of detrimental treatment in the employment. Or sometimes it could be implied or explicit threat about a present or future employment status. For example, people, in fact, when we have seen some cases where suppose there is the annual appraisal is closed now, very close or probably happening in next few weeks. So this person, in fact, will say, okay, let us go outside and we can informally chat about your progress during the month, during the entire year. And in that, it is indicated that, okay, fine, your progress was okay, but I think there was some problem in your performance. I think we should go for a movie, or probably we should again meet for the dinner. May not be for the lunch. We can go alone. So that kind of indication, I think, when the indication is given, it means that there is some threat to the employment for the future. Or it could be basically quid pro quo, means asking some favor in lieu of something. Sometimes it could be interference with the work or creating an intimidating or offensive hostile work environment. So talk something rubbish about a lady in the organization, so that hostile work environment is created. In one real life example, again it's basically in Delhi. So in this particular case, the lady employee comes a little late to the office in the morning, and the boss in front of everyone says, okay, you are recently married, so you must be having the late nights. That's the reason you are coming late to the office. So basically he's not seeking any sexual favor, but this is basically creating a hostile work environment for a lady in present of so many employees. So I think this is again a good example of that. Then humiliating treatment likely to affect health or safety. If there is a humiliating treatment and which is affecting health or safety, and there is a sexual connotation, that amounts to sexual harassment. So I was talking about regulatory fines and all those things. Let me just see this slide. This is very interesting case. This is case of one of the company, very technology company, very known company. In this particular case, a lady, in fact, was appointed in the company, and she was to be sent on secondment to another country. But I think something goes wrong between that. I think this lady, in fact, files a complaint of sexual harassment with the committee. The committee doesn't take the cognizance, and this lady in fact goes to the police station and files a complaint against the person who has sexually harassed and other 9 other members, including the management. And we agreed with that. In fact, the company also challenged the decision in the court, and finally they both fight with each other, and the matter goes to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said that when you have the arbitration mechanism in the company, why did you come to us? Please go to the arbitrator in your company and talk to them, and probably he can resolve that matter. When these people come to the arbitrator listen to them, and this lady says that there was no committee in the organization, and they in fact decide the matter against the lady or in the favor of company, I can say. Agreed with this decision, this particular lady employee goes to the High Court of Madras, and she challenged, and she says that there was no committee. When the company was called there, they said, my lord, we had the committee because we had the ombudsman mechanism where there are 2 people. The High Court says that what is ombudsman? This is a 2-member mechanism. The law doesn't accept that. The law says that there should be an internal committee with the 4 members, and this is defined. Then there is some criteria about those 4 members that is not there. So where is the question of having a committee? So we don't recognize this as a committee, and it says that, sorry, and the law says that whatever the committee or the policy is saying, basically it needs to be thrown out of the window. Sorry.
Go ahead, Raj. We can hear you.
So am I visible here?
Yeah, you are. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Raj.
So in fact, this particular lady employee challenges various things because there was lot of loss in respect of various things. For example, loss of job and loss of emoluments, loss of career opportunity, everything. And she filed a compensation for 20 crores on various aspects. And for sexual harassment, she in fact the claim for 8 crores from the court, the damages. And in fact, you will be surprised to know in this particular case, the court directed the company to pay 1.68 crores to the employee as the damages. So you can understand how serious the courts are. Not only this, if you see, there was one more hospital, very known hospital in Madhya Pradesh. In fact, there was no constitution of the committee, and they were not in fact taking the cognizance because, and the matter, she finally went to the local committee, which is constituted under the district officer and the collector office. And in fact, they discreetly come and verify whether everything was in order in the company, whether they have displayed the sexual harassment, anti-sexual harassment committee order and all those. Nothing was there. And these people make false submission before the court, and they never knew that they already visited discreetly to the hospital. And finally, in this particular case, the court in fact imposed a penalty of rupees 50 lakh rupees to the employer, and directs the employer to give that money to the lady. So there are many cases like these. I mean, there are some cases in Bangalore also, I mean, where a lot of money was recovered from the respondent. May I request Sunil to run this poll?
Sure. So this is for everybody. How many POSH regulatory reporting are there? Can you please select one of the options, please? The A, B, C, D respectively are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Central, can the participants select the polling here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
So 30-second gone.
Sure.
So we have we will close at 45.
So Sunil, can you summarize that?
Yeah. So can you publish that? Yeah, right. So Raj, we have 29% saying 1, 25% saying 2, nearing 23% saying 3, and nearing 23% saying 4. I'm actually tempted to say 1, 2, 3, 4. All of them have been more or less similar in response. Over to you, Raj.
Okay, thank you. So I think, yeah, I mean, I agree that there is one regulatory reporting which is annually, it is happening. This is, everyone knows about it. But I think there are 3 regulatory reportings. But again, depends upon the which kind of under which category the company falls. So let us move on to the next slide. We can see. So there are 3 regulatory reportings. So first is basically the district officer. District officer is basically the officer of rank of deputy collector under the collector office or in the collector office. and there the company in fact is supposed to send the information. It is basically a calendar year, not the fiscal year. Once the completion of the calendar year, the internal committee is supposed to share the report to the local committee, or I can say the district officer, and that report should contain nature of action taken by the employer, number of cases complaint filed, number of cases disposed of, number of cases pending more than 90 days, number of workshops and awareness session conducted on sexual harassment. And it is not only that, if there are no cases in a year, the law expects that still the nil report needs to be filed with the district officer. It's very important. So let's move to the next slide now. This is basically there is an amendment in 2014 in the Companies Act, which it says that the company has to give a statement while filing the regulatory reportings. It says that the statement of the company has complied with the provisions relating to the constitution of the IC under the Sexual Harassment Act. And it also says that the company, it talks about the Companies Act disclosure framework, and directors of every company are required to comply with the annual reports. And if they are not complying with this law or this annual filing, then there is a penalty, almost talks about 5 lakh rupees, or it can be increased up to 25 lakh as well. And there is also imprisonment given in this particular section in the new amendments. And there is third one, basically it is for the listed companies. The third one, when there are companies are listed, they are also supposed to file the regulatory reporting to the SEBI. It talks about the corporate governance framework prescribed by SEBI for all the listed companies. So here, amendment to SEBI listing obligation disclosure requirement has been made, and those norms were approved. And under this DRR, one has to file that annual report. But here again, the report is basically the fiscal year. And also in this report, one needs to also communicate that the constitution of the committee has been done. So let us see from the past review now what is important here. We'll go one by one about this law. So especially the internal auditors would be, I think, little careful, because sometimes there is some no clarity, because many policies are gender neutral. Nothing wrong in it. Let the companies have the gender neutral policies. But I think whenever there is a complaint by a lady employee against a man, against the agreed person, against the respondent or the male employee in the organization, that has to be dealt under this law only. One important thing is here, unless the lady gives the written complaint and sign that complaint, IC will not take the complaint or the cognizance. The lady may file, the aggrieved women may file a complaint via mail, or she may probably communicate via hotline, or probably maybe it could be through the whistleblowing channel. IC cannot take the cognizance. IC need the written complaint, and that too with the signature of that particular aggrieved women, and that complaint needs to be given in 6 copies. This is condition precedent of the law. If someone is filing the complaint on the and IC, in fact, I can request internal auditors here, if you are coming across this kind of complaint in the records when you are doing the audit, where there are complaints actually downloaded from the mail or probably some other source, and which is not signed, I think IC should not have taken this, because the IC is also supposed to give 1 copy of the complaint to the respondent. And if the respondent, definitely in all these cases, the respondent goes to the lawyer and they say, there is some sexual harassment complaint against me, this is a notice, and this is the complaint has been shared with me by the committee. So in the first instance, the lawyer will say, don't worry, this they will not, IC cannot act upon this. So because there is no written and signed complaint. So, and this law is, another important thing is, this law is only for the women. Only women can file the complaint. If the women is not signing this complaint, it doesn't mean that the company cannot take the action. The other disciplinary authorities in the company can take the action, but not the internal committee. They cannot take the or deal with this kind of application. And only the complaint can be filed by women against the male employee, or the women employee against the male employee. It is not applicable to any other gender. So vis-a-vis, I mean, likewise, the male employee also cannot file the complaint under this act. Otherwise, they can file with other discipline authority in the organization. And coverage, I will not go again into detail. I said any person who is coming to the at the workplace is covered under this act. And beyond your desk, It is not confined to your desk or probably restricted to the four walls of the company or the company premises. It applies beyond also. So we'll talk about what is workplace here. So then we'll see, we have already seen what is sexual harassment. One has to see whether the committee has dealt with the sexual harassment, discrimination, harassment. So if it is harassment and discrimination, it is bad in law under this act. It can go to other committees. Then complaint procedure. There is a complaint procedure. One needs to follow that properly. Otherwise, without following the principle of natural justice, there is again, it will be treated bad in law. And periodic monitoring is important because I have seen many companies, their policies talks about internal complaints committee. So I think there has to be an amendment because the law is already amended. It doesn't recognize the internal complaints committee, that has been substituted with internal committee now. That modification needs to be done in the policies. So what is workplace here? So workplace is basically workplace is defined as any place visited by the employee arising out of or during the course of employment, including transportation provided by the employer for undertaking a journey. So it says that any employee coming to the workplace or arising out of during the course of employment. For example, if you're going for assignment outside the workplace to the client's place or any other place, if you're traveling together, then this law would be applicable to employees. That still to be a workplace. Or the company is providing a vehicle for the transportation, so that transportation vehicle also is considered as workplace. Suppose there are company offsites, that is also considered as a workplace. So then government organizations, private sectors, NGOs, it applies to everyone: hospitals, nursing homes, dwelling place or house. I would like to share some examples here which are very interesting here. Now there will be a question. So suppose the employee and the male employee, for example, if they decide on Sunday, let us go for the dinner. They meet voluntarily, both decide and they meet. So here the employment, it is not something concerned with the workplace. The employer has not told them to go for the dinner or lunch. It is not a company arranged or sponsored dinner or lunch. They on their own they decide and go there. So company is not at all involved, and they go to a restaurant and something goes wrong. The lady comes next day to the office and files a sexual harassment complaint. So whether this is a complaint of sexual harassment or whether it is a workplace. So you can park your questions. I mean, I will answer those questions, but I have some important judgments here. So in fact, there is one very important case decided by the Madras High Court. In this particular case, there is a factory. I will not name the factory. It is Salem, and these employees, a group of employees, standing outside the company or the factory, and these people are basically the union leaders and all. And in this particular case, the company, the one lady comes out of the factory, was little seen worried. This employee, the president of this employee union, approached her and asked her what happened. She says that there is some sad demise in my family, so I'm looking for an auto rickshaw. He said, don't worry, come and sit on my vehicle, I'll drop you at the station. While dropping her at the station, he molested her. After a few days, she comes back and resumed the work, and then she filed a complaint. Here, the matter goes to the labor court in Salem. The labor court says it is sexual harassment because they both are still related as an employee. He challenged the decision before the Madras High Court. Madras High Court also says that, even though it is completely out of the work, he takes the plea that, okay, this is outside the workplace and this is outside the duty hours. So it cannot be at the workplace. High Court still says that it is still the nexus between two of you. That nexus between the employment and the workplace cannot be removed, or that's the reason it is workplace. So I think one has to be little, if such complaints are refused by the committee, one has to take a look and then do the brainstorming, and then I think one should take a cognizance of such complaints also. And there is one important decision pending before the Sikkim High Court. I think in a couple of weeks, I think it will be decided. I think that would be, I think, a landmark judgment as far as this is concerned. And another important thing is that whenever the expats coming from the foreign countries to India, and if they have many a time there are cultural issues also, they don't know how to behave, or probably for them it may not be sexual harassment, but for us it may be sexual harassment scenario. So there are some many cases. In fact, I was advising some company in the past, one of the British company. In this particular case, there was some offsite, and the experts also joined the offsite, and something goes wrong there, and they already filed the complaint. The expert says, no, we are the foreigner, and this act will not apply to us. One has to be very clear here that any person who is visiting our country, the law of the land applies to him or her. So this is very important. Sorry.
We can hear you. Go ahead. Yeah. Should I just go ahead
Yeah.
with the question?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I'm reading the second question. Sunita is looking for a job opportunity. She approached Ramesh, a recruiter in an organization on a social media network, and expressed her interest for the position. Taking undue advantage of the situation, Ramesh began to ask her inappropriate questions about her current relationship status, how many boyfriends she has, and made unwelcome personal remarks about her appearance. Sunita feels that her modesty has been outraged. What should she do? A. She cannot do anything as the conversation was informal and took place on a social media network. B. She could write to employer or IC of the organization and demand action against Ramesh. C. She can approach the police and file a complaint against Ramesh. D. Both B and C are correct. Senthil, if we have the results, you may publish that, please.
Yes, sir, it's 23 seconds. So we will give 45 seconds. Then we will share it.
Sure. Okay. So maybe I'll just read the question quickly again. Sunita is looking for a job opportunity. She approached Ramesh, a recruiter in the organization, on social media network and expressed her interest for the position. Taking undue advantage of the situation, Ramesh began to ask her inappropriate questions about her current relationship status, how many boyfriends she's had, and made unwelcome personal remarks about her appearance. Sunita feels that her modesty has been outraged. What should she do? You have the answers there. I think we have the poll coming out as well. So we have, she cannot do anything. Nobody has preferred that. It's just 2%. The majority of the people have said both B and C are correct.
I think, yeah, Sunil, I think the last one is correct. She can definitely go to the employer or the IC of that particular organization. So here, again, you have to see from the perspective, because see why the law has come. The intention of the law is basically earlier, whatever the scenario of the sexual harassment were not covered under the act. So that needs to be covered. When the legislator drafted this act, they never realized this could be the situation also. So in this particular case, this is a real life case, which was actually a bank, in fact, was doing the interview, or an employee, a senior employee from the bank was doing the interview online on the LinkedIn platform. So this was considered as sexual as the workplace, and the cognizance was taken by the company, and accordingly, I think that action was taken against the concerned employee here.
Great. We can move on, Raj.
Yeah. So now in the COVID situation, this is very important. If the people have seen some cases in the public domain, and I also, in fact, one of the companies contacted me. I have seen that in the cases, in fact, our sexual harassment are coming online, maybe on the WhatsApp and all, and those cases have been dealt, or probably companies taking cognizance of those cases. So it is very much applicable in the current scenario as well. So now we can give just 20 seconds for this answer because this is a short question. So another question is, how should an employer or workplace constitute an internal committee?
You may publish the results. Thank you. Okay, Raj, we have 56% who said by including in the sexual harassment policy.
Okay, I think good. I think many companies are doing this, but I think the law says that when they are actually constituting the committee, I think that committee, in fact, that the order of the committee, they have used the word called order. The company or the employer has to issue an order constituting the committee. These are the committee, and that needs to be displayed at the conspicuous places in the organization with their contact details and all. But most of the companies, they're not issuing the order. Either they are actually, as many people mentioned, it is either in the policy. Someone actually are doing. There is nothing wrong doing in the policy, but the order has to be there. And some companies are doing via mail. Sometimes people, in fact, are doing some. They are just posting the information on the intranet, probably on website. So I think that notifying to the order, I think that is important, or very as defined in the Act. So now let us see next question. Sunil, you can read out.
Yeah, sure. How should be the composition of the internal committee? A, it should have minimum 5 members, minimum 6 members, minimum 4 members, or minimum 3 members. Sanjay, you can keep this also short for 20 seconds, please. Thank you. Majority have said minimum 4 members, that's 53%.
Absolutely, it should be minimum 4 members. Next, Sunil.
Sure. Yeah. What should be the qualification of external member sitting on the committee? A, a person who is familiar with the labor service. B, a social worker with 5 years experience of social work. C, none of the above. D, both A and B. What should be the qualifications of external members sitting on the committee? Person who is familiar with the labor service, civil or criminal law, a social worker with 5 years experience of social work for women empowerment and in particular addressing sexual harassment, none of the above, or both A and B. Great. So we have both A and B as 73% of the result coming, Raj.
Absolutely, Sunil. That's the correct answer. Next one, Sunil.
Can I go ahead with the next question? The head of the internal committee is termed as chairperson, presiding officer, president, all of the above.
What are the results, Sunil?
Yeah, the results are 57% saying the presiding officer.
Absolutely, this presiding officer. Many a times when I review the policies, doing the gap analysis of the existing policies of the organization, I always come across the word chairman, sometime president, sometime head, sometime. I think nothing wrong using that, but I think one should maintain the consistency, because when the matter goes to the court, sometimes challenged before appellate authority, they are used to this kind of terminology which are mentioned in the Act. So we have to be what is mentioned in the Act. I think we should be very consistent with that.
Okay, we have the next question, which says who can receive the complaints if the IC has not been constituted due to having less than 10 workers, or if the complaint is against the employer himself? The district officer, state or national commission for women, appellate authority, local committee. So we have again, interestingly, Raj, here we have the district officer as 49% with a close second of the local committee.
Okay, I think local committee is the right answer here, because whenever there is a complaint against the employer, or when there is no committee constituted, the person can approach to the aggrieved women can approach to the local committee. So now let us see what, I mean, as an auditor, what one has to go and check or probably review when they are doing the audit. One is basically the constitution of committee. So one has to figure out whether the committee constituted is as per the Act and rules. When you do this kind of activity of the audit, I think you have to completely rely upon 3 things. One is basically the POSH Act, POSH rules, and there is one ministry, in fact, has issued the guidelines, Ministry of Women and Child Development. That also can also be a good handy, in fact, book which could be relied upon. And also check whether separate internal committees have been constituted at each location. The law says that each location, but I have seen many companies, they are constituting only one committee, a centralized committee at the central location. That will not meet the purpose of the law, because if there is a complaint that women should not run from pillar to post, she should be immediately have some access to talk to the person at her location. That is the objective of the law. And verify the company's issued order in writing. We just discussed about this, and check if the company has the required qualifications, which we also discussed some time ago. And verify the committee members with the adverse background. If there is a conflict of interest and adverse background, those committee members should not be the part of the IC. And also ensure whether dissemination has been done, the policy dissemination, and how it is done. I think that's the important thing. Whether it could be various channels, maybe displaying at the conspicuous places, that is very important, which is mentioned in the law. So that needs to be done, and rest apart from that, whatever the company wish to do or the IC wish to do, that is fine. And are the complaints of sexual harassment dealt as per the law? So this is important again. The auditors especially have to understand what is principles of natural justice. So if anyone has this query about how to handle this, I think then they can connect me with the offline also, I can guide them what is principle of natural justice, how that should be met. That is the basically heart of this particular act, the law, which and every the law also talks about it, and that should be the purpose of the principle of natural justice while doing the inquiries. Check if the employees have been sensitized on how to file the complaints. This is very important. The policy should be clearly talking about how to file the complaints and how the IC can help the victim. This is also important. Whether the policy talks about if the complainant is unwilling to, or probably is not willing in the position to file the complaint. So whether the IC is the mechanism is there, whether IC is assisting or probably can assist the complainant. So we have one more question here.
Sure. In conducting the inquiry, minimum how many members should remain present during each proceeding? Nothing is specified in the Act. It should have minimum 2 members, minimum 4 members, or minimum 3 members. Go ahead, Chanchal. You may want to poll it, please. While the poll is happening, Raj, right, great. I think we have the poll as well, results. 39% have said that it should have minimum 3 members, with a close second of minimum 2 members.
Yeah. So very true. There should be minimum 3 members in the committee, always. Always in one proceeding, always in each proceeding, there should be 3 members. And the presiding officer has to be there in all the proceedings. So there is no chance. I mean, presiding officer has to be there. And other than the presiding officer, any 2 members. But my suggestion here is basically, if you are writing a policy, your company has a policy, please mention that external member should be always there in all the proceedings. Why? Because external member is an independent person. Even though the law is not talking about that, but I think one should ensure that external member has the presence in the hearings all the time, or on all the proceedings. Then we talk about conciliation.
Yeah, the conciliation can be initiated at the request of the respondent, agreed women, internal committee, all of the above. Go ahead, Chanchal, you may want to publish it. Okay, most have said agreed women. Sorry, so all of the above has been the answer, but the second one has been the agreed women.
Absolutely agreed women. I think the complaint should be, the conciliation should be always at the request of the agreed women. The committee sometime, in fact, the respondent comes and says, sir, I want to apologize to that lady or my colleague. Please tell her. Internal committee should not mediate, or any other authority should not mediate. If the complainant and the respondent are meeting outside, respondent going to her house or meeting outside and touching her feet, requesting her not to pursue the matter, if they come before the committee and tell us, okay, we are fine, we want the conciliation, the lady says that is fine. But as the internal committee, we should not be getting into the conciliation. It is always at the behest and request of the agreed women. Then inquire into the complainant. Review the cases when the internal auditors are reviewing the cases. When they pick up the cases dealt in the past, I think you should always tell the committee that whenever they are sharing the information, they should be sharing. They should not be sharing the identities of the name and identities of the parties to the proceedings, whether it could be the witnesses, whether it could be complainant or the respondent, because they are the only people actually who are dealing in the complaints committee, employer, and maybe at the most HR actually they are the stakeholders who are actually closely working with the parties. Nobody else is supposed to know about it. Of course, I mean the law has not talked about the audit and all, but I think it's as a good practice, or probably to enhance our good practices in the organization. We follow this good practice, but I think it's always tell them that you can take the reports and all those documents without the identities of the parties. Tomorrow someone not raise the finger and say there is a leakage of the information or probably breach of confidentiality. And while doing this, you can always check whether the complaints were accepted beyond timelines. The timeline basically is 3 months, and if there are series of incident, and then 3 months from the last date of last incident. And sometimes the complainant is not possible for her. It is not possible to file the complaint in 3 months. She can come after 3 months. So in such cases, the burden of the IC is to find out what were the reasons compelled her to not come. If you are giving a satisfactory reason, or taking some or producing some information with regard to that, some documentary evidence or something, maybe she was undergoing psychiatric treatment, maybe she was not well, In such cases, the committee should be recording the reasons in writing and accepting that complaint. But as an auditor, you should find out whether that kind of documentation is existing in the file. Otherwise, I think that's a question mark. It is accepted beyond the timelines. If the lady comes beyond the timelines, I'm not saying that the complaint cannot be accepted, but I think the IC cannot deal with those cases. That can be forwarded to the concerned other department or other discipline authority where they can take the action. Check if any exceptions allowed. I just told you, and if it is beyond 3 months, then I think then one has to then record the reasons in writing. And also check there are some when the complaint is issued, whether within 7 days the complaint copy and the letter has been sent to the respondent, and whether respondent responded in 10 days. So I think all this should be very important while doing the audit. Then check if the letters notice have been sent to the parties to the proceeding, directing them to appear before the committee. When the people are appearing before the committee, what is the document trail there? Have they been sent the notices or letters to come and join the IC? That is important. And review the proceeding files. The proceeding file where the people are doing the inquiries and all those things, it is important because all these things are there. In fact, the complaint is there, which is called as exhibit. Some other documentary electronic evidence is there, that can also be an exhibit in that. So I think one has to see that whether they have done the examination, cross-examination, re-examination. Basically, I mean testifying the witnesses. I'm just saying that. And whether also check that whether they are maintained or probably mentioned to the parties the decorum of the committee, because sometimes people don't cooperate. In Delhi, in one of the cases, the complainant and the respondent brought face to face, and the respondent said, "ठीक है जी, आपने complaint file किया, देख लेंगे शाम में, acid फेंक देंगे आपके मुंह पर." In another case, one respondent threatened a lady, said कि ठीक है, आजकल दिल्ली में बहुत सारे accident होते हैं, संभल के जाना घर पे. So I think that retaliation clause should be there, and all these things should be there, which is not mentioned in the law, but as a good practice, these things should be there. And the law says that the complainant and the respondent should not be brought face to face. So that decorum of the committee, that the committee has a civil court power and all those things, that needs to be explained to the party so that they should not act funny while actually conducting the inquiry or the proceedings. And also see that whether the inquiry was completed within the defined timeline of 90 days. When the inquiry is completed within 10 days, the committee is supposed to share the report with the respondent, with the employer, and the employer is supposed to complete the action within 60 days. So malicious complaint, I mean, this is a very, I mean, I always very emphasize on this. Many times, the first I told you that people many times think that this is basically women-centric law. My answer is always no, because the law has taken care of the malicious complaint or the false evidence. So if anyone is filing the complaint with a malicious intent or the false evidence, if the internal committee comes across this kind of complaint, they can always refer that matter to the employer and say that this committee, in fact, the complaint is false, in fact, and the employer, on the basis of the recommendation of the IC, can direct some other disciplinary authority in the organization to deal with this complaint, and more or less the inquiry process would be same. And if they come to the conclusion, the other committee, that this is indeed the complaint with a malicious intent or false evidence, they can recommend the similar action which has been mentioned in this particular act against the complainant also. So this is very important. But only thing is that here the same committee, because the committee is complainant here, because they are bringing out to the notice of the employer, we found the forgery or the false evidence here, or the malicious complaint. So they should not be dealing with this complaint, and they should be giving it to the employer with a recommendation to direct someone to independently look into this matter. So auditors also can check this.
There is also a check on the time. So my sincere request is like it's a very, very interesting session, but we may just have to speed up a little. Apologies for that interruption. Yeah. So can prima facie cases of malicious complaints be rejected without inquiry? So two options, true and false. Chanchal, you can publish this, please. Okay. False is what 90% have said, Raj.
Perfect.
Yeah. Who can inquire malicious and false complaints? The internal committee, the local committee constituted under the district officer, women commission, or any disciplinary authority in organization appointed by, sorry. appointed by the employer.
Absolutely, yeah. We just discussed this.
Go ahead, Chanchal. Yeah, a lot of them has said internal committee as a response to this.
No, internal committee cannot be, because internal committee is recommending to the employer. I just discussed that. So any
Right.
disciplinary authority in organization appointed by the employer. So the complainant cannot be the investigation officer here.
Right.
So that needs to be kept in mind. So action during the pendency, review the policy, whether if the complainant has given a written letter and requesting for interim relief for the leave for 3 months and all. So whether you have to check and understand whether that has been complied, because this is again mandatory, which is very important, that needs to be given to the employee the complainant. And basically this should be other than the leave she is entitled. So that should not be counted in her leave period what she is entitled to. So I told about reports and all, that is important. I think the timelines we have discussed, principle of natural justice we have discussed. Then we have one more question.
The person against whom the complaint of sexual harassment is filed is termed as a delinquent employee, accused, respondent, all of the above. Chanchal, go ahead, you may publish it, please. Okay. We have responded as point C. 51% have voted for that.
Absolutely. As I mentioned some time back, only the word respondent. I have seen many reports, I have seen many communication in the internal communication when I deal with these kind of cases. People or the internal committees or other stakeholders, they are using the word accused. Accused is the word only in the criminal cases. When the FIR is filed, then the word accused comes. Otherwise, never use the word accused, delinquent employee. Always use the word respondent. This could be a major observation by the auditors during the audit. So we mentioned about the malicious complaint, that provision has to be mentioned in the policy. Determining compensation, again the policy should have that, because the people who are actually reading the policy, they should all know about how that compensation can be determined. So that has been clearly given in the act. So regulatory compliances, I have discussed 3. So it's not only one, there are 3 regulatory compliances. The nil report is important, which we just discussed. And if the matters are challenged before the appellate authority, whether the internal committee has flagged it off to the legal department or the employee, it is very, very important, because the employer should be knowing about this, and you have to, as an auditor, you have to find out whether employer is aware of that, because if anything goes wrong in the courts of law appellate authority, the direct action is against the employer in many of the cases, because employer has been held guilty and asked to pay the money or probably damages to the victim or the aggrieved women. So one has to be very careful, and the employer should be aware of this particular thing. And just say, and the act did not define how many workshops to be done, but it is said that workshops to be done, then capacity skill building program needs to be done, employee sensitization plans to be done. Then it also talks about policy, but I'm categorically mentioning here is response plan. This is very, 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 very important. Many companies, or most of the companies, I say there is no response plan, or I can say the incident response. Incident response plan. So this is very important. It talks about each step, the moment that you receive the complaint till the final disposal of the complaint, or probably by the court of law or appellate authority or the employer. So it is very important, and it should be having all the templates and all those things which talks about that. But many companies, unfortunately, doesn't have. That's the reason when the matter comes, or when the complaint comes, so there is no consistency, and they in fact then started running here and there, going to the various people and talking to them. I think that should not happen. So response plan, please see that, put in place the response plan, very, very important. So we just discussed this, within 3 months that complaint will file, IC and all those with the entire steps you discussed. So daily proceeding diary, again a message for the internal audit is here. The law doesn't say about the minutes of the file or daily proceeding diary. But my humble request and submission is that please ensure that your committees actually are having these minutes of the file. For every case, there should be separate minutes of the file. File minutes, basically, it is very important because this is a judgment here. In fact, in this particular case, the respondent goes to the court and says that internal committee has not given me the opportunity. Then the internal committee, in fact, produce the minutes file before the court where the respondent signs that, and the court says that we cannot disbelieve because you already signed those minutes of the minutes file before the committee, and which clearly says that you are very much present in each proceedings. So we can't believe you, and you have been given all the reasonable opportunity. And there are many aspects we can't go into detail, but I think this is very, very important. The minutes file is very important. That can save the company, that can save the internal committee's actions and the employer. So my recommendation, I think, as a IA or probably internal auditors or probably as internal committee members, ensure that drafting policy and amendment of the policy, doing the gap analysis is very important. Response plan, again, I'm saying this is a key message from my presentation today. Please do this. Formal minutes file, which we just discussed, this is very important. And also there should be informal minutes file because the law says that there has to be meetings, brainstorming sessions, awareness, how many meetings you have conducted. I think all those informal meetings you can discover various judgments, happenings, amendments, and all those things. So from that perspective, it is very important. Create all those. I think that would be very good to effectively deal the sexual harassment cases end to end. So that's my message here. So the forum is open for the questions and answers now. I'll answer. Please, if you have any questions, let me know.
Raj, I will take it up in terms of, I'm reading it out for you. What are the key points to be taken care from a remote work perspective, and what should be our focus and educating areas for the company?
So what is important here is one has to be a little careful especially while sending the messages via the mail, or probably it could be Skype chats on the mail on the system. It could be sometime people feel that if I'm sending something on the Skype chat, it is not recorded. Everything is recorded. Even if it is not recorded, still it is sexual harassment because there is a nexus between the people. There are some cases, in fact, I'm reading in the public domain. People are in fact sending some messages, mails, and the WhatsApp chats also, where people, the aggrieved women have gone to the committees and filed the complaint. So complete no for any messages. If you are not clear, if there is a doubt whether it amounts to sexual harassment or not, then keep it in mind, this is subjective law. The interpretation could be sexual harassment by a lady. So I think better is that even if it is a joke, don't forward. Sometimes if you're not attributing that joke in the group, still I think if it has a sexual connotation or it is a non-veg kind of joke, please don't share. Or maybe it could be a semi-formal kind of joke also. I think that should also be not shared because it is again the subjective experience of the women. If she feels, even if it is not attributed to her because that is a hostile work environment for her, she can file the complaint. So keep it in mind that.
Raj, I'll take the next question. POSH is applicable even to small companies. Is that correct, Raj? The word
absolutely. Yeah, Sunil. The POSH Act is applicable to each company. The companies which have 10 or more employees. All such, even though there are no women employees in the company, but still they need to constitute the committee. Now the question would be how to constitute the committee if there are no women employees in the company. So they can borrow the committee from the subsidiary or the parent company, or if it is not, they can go to the regulator and take the guidance. I have the RTI on that. I will not go into the details, but if someone has this challenge, please contact me. I'll let you know how can it be done.
I will take a last question then. Yeah, sorry, Raj. Sure. Please go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that, yeah, so that committee can be constituted. If it is not constituted, it cannot be constituted. Better go to the local committee and file that complaint there.
Okay, great. Thanks, Raj. Can the company legal officer be the external member?
So if it's an employee, I think, see, there is again a gray area. I was reading one judgment today morning. It said that there's a similar question was raised before the High Court, Delhi High Court, and said that this person, in fact, there is a conflict. He cannot sit in the committee. So the High Court has a similar question. what is the biasness, whether how he is biased to the committee. So in that particular case, in fact, they said no, he cannot be biased in the particular committee, sitting in that committee. So that's a different judgment, there's a different scenario. So it depends upon the context and scenario. So straightforward, you cannot say whether he can sit on the committee or not.
Okay. Can
So
I, with your request?
if there is a clear conflict, I think one cannot sit. For example, if in one case the witness is basically the presiding officer, so the presiding officer withdraw or probably recuse herself from the committee. But in another case, the legal officer was not allowed to sit.
Okay.
Depends. There are various judgments.
Raj, there's a rather long question. I'll read for you, and this will be the last question for us. For a company having presence in multi-geography, whether POSH policy would also focus for sexual harassment against men, specifically in countries dominated by women in workplace like Russia, Ukraine, etc. Interesting question, but should I read it for you again, Raj?
Yeah, absolutely, Sunil. So if you see many countries, there are gender-neutral policies or the laws. So this is applicable to everyone there. In India, seeing the historical the data, I think especially after the Nirbhaya or probably the Vishaka case and all, I think the legislators going by the data, I think they actually created the law which basically where the women can file the complaint of sexual harassment. But there are civil options open. For example, if the companies can have a gender neutral policy, can deal with such cases. If suppose the companies are unable to take the action against the women employees who are harassing the male employees, in such cases the male employee can go to the court of law and then file the complaint for the harassment. So that option is available. So it doesn't mean that if there is no such specific legislation at the workplace, but still, yeah, there are various other options. Defamation could be there, civil action could be there, or should be there.
Sure. I know I said last 3 times, but I'll say the fourth time, but I promise to keep it as the last question. There's a lot of questions pouring in. How many awareness sessions we have to conduct in a year? I believe it would, the author has asked here, rather the person has asked here, what could be your suggestion in it? While you mentioned there is nothing written in law in the earlier conversation.
So ideally, when I'm sitting in the committee, usually I do at least once in a quarter. Awareness session. See, one is basically about the awareness session for the employee sensitization training. It can be done twice. It can be a recommended training, and there could be some mandatory trainings. So I think this falls under mandatory training bracket. I think the companies should at least do once in online training should be also fine. Web-based learning.
Great.
But for
I really think
committees and all, I think that brainstorming session would be regular. It could be monthly, it could be bi-monthly, it could be quarterly. But I think seeing our the work pressure and all, I think once in a quarter for the IC should be fine.
Sure. So Raj, I can't thank you enough, you and Suprabhat, and on behalf of the IIA Hyderabad, a big thank you to you. The questions are still pouring in, and I will request all the audience who joined in a big thank you to you. I know we overshot on the time, but definitely, this is an area where we cannot be very pointed, and there would be question answer sessions on this. And Raj, a special thanks to you. I know Friday, late for everybody. A happy weekend to all of you. We do have certain questions as a survey on behalf of IIA. You may just want to please click this. Angel is going to run you through 3 questions quickly, and then you may please answer that. Raj, thanks on behalf of IIA Hyderabad, and taking out your time. We would request to see you a little more of you in the days to come, and experts like you. Thank you for joining and enlightening us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sunil, and thank you so much, IIA Hyderabad, and everyone and the participants joining here. I think thanks for the patient hearing. And if you have any questions, please contact us. We are happy. Anytime you can contact us, we are happy to answer all those questions.
Thank you so much. Great. Okay.